Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Young Mary Catherine returns to her eccentric scientist's father's home, but his all-consuming quest to discover a tiny civilization in a neighbouring forest drives them apart. However, MK soon finds herself shrunken down by the Queen Tara of the forest, who was mortally wounded by the putrefying bogans, and charged to deliver a pod bearing the new queen to safety. Together with a veteran Leafman warrior, two goofy mollusks, and a young maverick, MK agrees to help as the villainous Bogan's leader, Mandrake, closes in. MK and her new friends must draw on the best of themselves together and discover what they have to save their world. Epic. Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Human. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good. As per usual, as you heard in that wonderful topic summary, today I'm going to be talking about the movie Epic from 2013 by Blue Sky Studios. Yeah, I don't remember this movie either. But before we get into that, I'm going to do a bit of housekeeping, because I like to keep my house nice and clean. So make sure that you follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod to be kept up to date on everything and anything that I am doing, watching, listening, and all that jazz. Also, if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment down below. It helps the video out so much. That's how YouTube works. Is the more likes and the more comments it gets, the higher it gets seen and it gets pushed and advertised to more people. And if you like this episode, or if you like other episodes that I've done, don't forget to leave subscribe, because it helps me out so much and lets me know that people like what I do and more people want to listen. So every little helps, really. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be looking at Epic from 2013. This is a continuation of my Blue Sky Studios deep dive. For anybody who doesn't know, who's jumping in with this movie, welcome. And those that are returning, thank you. But since last year, I have been looking at the late but great Blue Sky Studios studio that was sadly it was bought by Disney when Disney bought Fox. It was procured, shall I say, used a better term. And Disney basically canned the studio. They got rid of it. And it was a studio that was here for a long time but felt like a short time, and didn't deserve to be canned, and that they had a lot of potential and had a lot going for them, and they made a lot of great, fantastic animated movies, which goes to show as well in my reviews. When I release an episode, some of the most successful episodes that I have done in my first year and second year, especially on YouTube, have been animated movies, specifically movies by Blue Sky Studios. Ice Age, my Ice Age reviews are some of my most popular and successful reviews on any platform. So there is people that grew up with these films. There are people that love Blue Sky Studios who might not even know the name Blue Sky, but know Robots, know Ice Age, know Rio, and know all the other films that they've done. There might be people listening to this who are fans of Epic, who do know what this movie is. There might be people who like the Peanuts movie, who like the Ferdinand movies, who like Spies in Disguise. We all know this studio in our own little way, but I wanted to look back and talk about this studio and give it the light that it deserved, because it's a studio that I feel like was shut down prematurely, that they had so much more to give and they were never allowed to flourish as much as they were allowed to. Like, what else could they have done after they made all the Ice Age movies? You know what I'm trying to say? But yeah, so that is what I am doing with this series. As for this movie, before we properly start, I want to ask a question, honest question right now. Does anyone remember this movie? Genuinely. And if you're answering, you're crazy because I can't hear you. This is a audio format. This is one way. I talk, you listen. I can't hear you scream. But I'm going to pretend I heard you. And majority of you said no, I would imagine, because majority of the people that I've spoken to, when I've said to them, I'm going to be reviewing Epic, a lot of them, if not all, said, "What is that? Who made it? When did it come out? Oh, I didn't know this movie existed. Who's in it? Really? What?" Nobody that I've spoken to who, even people that like animated movies, no one remember this film. Um, and I feel like it's down to mostly the title. Now, the it's hard to explain this one, so bear with me. The title of a movie, or even a title of something, does a lot of the advertising for you. If it's a title that is catchy or rememberable, you don't have to do it a lot in terms of advertising because people will remember the name. And remembering of the name of the movie is enough to spread word of mouth. So if I said to you, for example, "Oh, have you seen that new Terminator movie? Terminator. Oh, cool. What a cool name, Terminator. Hope they make more of them." You know what I mean? Terminator, it sounds cool. It's a water cooler sort of name that you could say without even actually watching the movie and be like, "You seen Terminator? I've seen Terminator." Whereas we'll take the name of this movie. You seen Epic? Epic. Yeah, Epic. Animated movie, 2013. No, can't say I have. Epic, you say? Yeah, Epic. It doesn't work as much. And once I'll get into when I talk about the production, when I was doing my research, I actually found that I think it was the director or the screenwriter, um, didn't like that the name of the film was changed, and that it was that the marketing team were the reasons that the name was changed from the original name, which is really really cool, which I've got in my notes, to what it is now with Epic. And I feel like the name itself is a reason for it, why this film's not successful. Now I have seen this film. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember hardly anything. All I remember are spurts, small segments in my head of like there's a snail and there's men who are dressed in leaf armor, um, and I feel like there's a shrinking mechanic to it. Like when I say mechanic, not like a video game, but like there's like a shrinking segment, like it's kind of like Fern Gully, and that's as far as I remember. Like I saw this film a long time ago, and this was 2013. This is when I was starting to get to the age of, well, I was a teenager. I was about 15. I finished school in 2014, so I was at the age now where I was watching animated movies, but I wasn't as, I don't know. I was more preoccupied of like other teenage things than animated films. So this one missed me by. But I remember seeing the adverts for it and just not being impressed. Not I didn't know. Like if you hadn't told me that this was made by Blue Sky, I would generally think this is just one of them, just an animated movie. It didn't feel like a Blue Sky. I'm watching the trailer now while I'm doing this segment, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking it doesn't look like a Blue Sky film. It looks, I don't know, it doesn't look like something that you would expect from them. It feels like from another studio, not a big name studio, like a studio from another country, or a studio that is starting out just trying in the animation business, animated movie business. It doesn't feel like what you think a Blue Sky movie feels like, and I can understand why people just don't know this film exists. And that's kind of got me excited to watch it and review it. Because I don't remember, I'm going in genuinely new. I don't know anything about it. I don't remember anything. I'm watching the trailer right now and it looks, oh, interesting, you know. Obviously, I'm trying not to judge it as I do with everything. I try to go in sort of glass empty type thing. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. It might be funny. It might be silly. It might be epic, as they say, or it might not be epic. But I wanted to ask the question at the beginning of like, does anybody remember this film? Because I can't find anybody who does. Even the people who are in the animated fandom circles who have seen it but can't recall it, or even those that are in the circle but can't really recall it at all, don't remember it, don't even know it exists. So it's an interesting dynamic. So I just wanted to ask the question if anybody does remember this movie because, yeah, it's interesting. Um, and the reason it's interesting is because the cast is so star-studded cast. Like you've got Amanda Seyfried as Mary Kathleen or MK. You've got Josh Hutcherson who played who was in Hunger Games, who was in Bridge to Terabithia, who was in The Thora. He was in the recent Five Nights at Freddy's film. So he, again, well-known actor. You've got Beyonce's in this as Queen Tara. Colin Farrell plays Ronin or Ronin, maybe. Blake Anderson is Dagda. Aziz Ansari is Mud. Alison Bills as Dandelion Jill. John DiMaggio is Pinecone Jin. It's a star-studded cast. People, well-known actors, comedians, Academy Award winners, Beyonce, talented singer. We all love her. And again, it makes you think you've got all this star-studded cast. Why does nobody remember it? Why is this movie just not remembered? And that's the question that I want to go in this film with, is the fact of why is it not epic? Why is it not what's written on the label? Because if it was so epic, why don't I remember it? What is it about this movie that me, when I did watch it, none of it stuck? So that in itself is why I love to do these sort of reviews and watch movies like this, is the fact of you always find that one movie of like, I have no idea what this is. It could be good, it could be bad. I'm judging it off a trailer, trailer with no sound, by the way, so I don't know what's being said. So, yeah. As for the production, so in 2006, it was reported that Chris Wedge would be directing an animated feature film based on William Joyce's book, The Leaf Men and the Brave Good Bugs for Fox Animation. Joyce, who had already collaborated with Wedge as the designer and producer of the 2005 film Robots, which is an absolute masterpiece. I love Robots. If you haven't listened to my review of Robots, please go back and check it out. It's incredible. Not just the review, but also the film as well. Not to toot my own horn, but was set to produce the film. At one point, Wedge got permission to find a new home for the film and turned to Pixar, led by John Lasseter, a close friend that Wedge knew from working on Tron. When Pixar tried to close the rights for the film and start development, which would have been its first film adaptation of existing work and a departure from its precedent of basing all of its films on original ideas, Fox changed their mind and the film returned to Fox. Yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, Pixar likes to develop their movies from original ideas. So like, if you work for Pixar, if you be the head of the company to the janitor, everybody in that company has, if they have an idea, can pitch the idea. And that's the idea of Pixar, is the fact of anybody in the company who has an idea can pitch an idea. And if it's successful, it will be made into either a short film or a full-length movie. That's just how Pixar works, and I love that idea behind them. But if this would have gone through, this would have been the first time they actually did a movie based on an existing IP, which I don't think they actually did until Lightyear. Even though they own the IP, it's still from an existing IP. But don't quote me on that one. Anyway, the film was officially greenlit in 2009 under the title Leaf Men, which is a much better name. Or I would have went Leafman, or just had it as one big word, as pronounced as Leafman. But anyway, in May 2012, Fox announced the final title for the film, Epic, 3D CGI, its first cast details, and a plot. According to Wedge, he was not satisfied with the renaming, which was decided by the marketing department. He also expressed a dissatisfaction with subtitles given to the film in some non-English countries, including the French subtitles, The Battle of the Secret Kingdom. Although the film is based on and borrowed many characters from Joyce's books, its plot had been significantly changed. Wedge explained, while Bill wrote a wonderful book, it is a quaint story. We wanted to make a gigantic action adventure movie to address online speculations about whether the film is similar to other films like Fern Gully, The Lost Rainforest, or Avatar. Wedge said, I hate to associate it with other movies. It is adventure on the scale of Star Wars. Oh, well, we'll see about that. And it does immerse the audience completely in the world like Avatar, but has its own personality. Those are some brave words. There's some brave words, Mr. Wedge. You're trying to say, like, it's adventure on the scale of Star Wars. Well, that's some strong words. And it's going to immerse the audience completely in a world like Avatar. Again, some pretty strong words. We'll see. We will see. But yeah, I like the original name, Leafman or Leafman. I'm from the Midlands, so how I pronounce man, it comes out differently. But Leafman or men even sounds a lot better. Sounds a lot more interesting. Is a lot more intriguing. If I saw that on a poster, Leafmen. Me personally, I'd be more interested to be like, oh, Leafman, that's an odd name. I'll have a look, and then be interested to wanting to watch the trailer. Whereas if you have a post that says Epic, I'm like, if the title is Epic, what I'm looking at on the poster or even in the trailer needs to reflect that. It needs to reflect epicness. If you write epic, I need to see epicness as soon as I see it. The poster needs to say everything it needs to say. And from looking at the poster, it doesn't seem epic. It seems alright, it seems cool, seems somewhat interesting, but I wouldn't say it feels epic. You know what I mean? Whereas if you actually was to Google epic poster, or not epic poster, but epic the movie poster, because you probably get a different poster. But if you was to Google Epic the movie poster, right, and then if you was to get rid of the word epic, and then type and probably put in Leafman, I would be more interested in going, oh, Leafman. There's a guy in the background with some green armor that's probably made out of leaves. There's another guy with a bow and arrow in the same sort of armor. That's cool. There's some snails. There's some birds and like a weird like fantasy thing on the background. There's an evil guy in the back with a staff. It's made by the guy that make Ice Age and Rio. I like those films. I'd be interested in checking it out and then, watching the trailer and, kind of gauge a feeling from that. And then looking at stills from the movie again, Leafman. I'm more interested and inclined to want to check it out with a name like Leafman. But when you got a film like Epic, it's like if it doesn't feel epic, I'm not going to believe it's epic. And I feel again, this is my interpretation. Again, I haven't seen this movie in a long time. I don't remember anything about it. I might completely change my mind when I get to the review. But I just feel like that is probably the reason why this movie isn't remembered so much, is the fact of with a name like Epic, which is very forgettable name, and I feel like it's one of those that just came and went. It went under the radar. Actually, I'm going to look at animated movies that came out in 2013. So animated movies 2013, just to see like what was its competition. So 2013, we had Epic, we had Walking with Dinosaurs, Escape from Planet Earth, which is actually a lot of fun. Had The Croods, we had Monsters University, Freebird, Despicable Me 2, Planes, Turbo, which is great. And then I'm trying to find other ones that people take the kids to watch. Like we had a few of the Batmans, like Flashpoint and Batman: The Dark Knight Part 1 and 2. Clouded with a Chance of Meatballs 2, Smurfs 2, Thomas and Friends, King of the Railway. What else we've got? Saving Santa, Superman Unbound, Legend of Oz, Tom and Jerry Giant's Adventure. Like there was a lot. It was going up against a lot. Even though, like, you know, you had a lot that it was going up against in 2013, but if it needed to make a splash. If you've got films like Despicable Me Too, Monsters University, which again I'm not a fan of it, but Monsters University, and you had Planes, which again not as good as Cars, but still Pixar. People are going to go watch that instead. Um, Freebirds, again, a fun little animated movie that I quite enjoy. Great. Another sort of Studio Ghibli movie, Wind Rises. I think it's Studio Ghibli anyway. It looks Ghibli. But this is the point I'm trying to make: is the fact of it had a lot coming out against, and with a name like Epic, would you choose to go see Epic or Turbo? Again, not a great movie, but you've got a snail and it says Turbo. It looks somewhat more interesting. Monster University, Pixar, safe bet. Go watch that. Planes, safe bet. Go watch that. Escape from Planet Earth looks interesting with aliens on it. Go watch it. The Croods looks interesting. This is the point I'm trying to make, is the fact of it had a lot it was up against. So it had a better name, it probably would have fared better, and would have been a lot more widely known and less forgotten. Sorry, I missed out. Frozen came out this year, so it had no chance. That's probably why no one remembers it. Everybody was saying, let it go, and then all these other movies got destroyed. So, I was harsh. That's why no one remembers it. Frozen came out this year. That's why. Sorry, Epic. Sorry. It's not your fault. It's Frozen. Obviously, it's Frozen. And I'm partly taking the mick, but also partly being serious of like, yes, Frozen. We all know how much of a juggernaut that is, which I'll admit, I'm not a big fan of Frozen. I prefer Tangled. I think Tangled is a better movie. I'd rather see a sequel to Tangled than Frozen, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, that is all I have to say for the introduction for this movie. I am excited and I'm looking forward to seeing what the film has in store. Is it epic? Is it not? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it worth remembering? Is it not? There's many questions that I'm going in with, and you're going to find out very shortly. I'm going to go off now and watch it. You lucky beans get to see my thoughts and feelings in a couple of seconds. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? Let's see if this movie's any good. And we're back. So I've just finished watching the Epic movie, which it doesn't sound good to say. It doesn't roll off the tongue. It would sound better if I would said, and we're back. I've just finished watching The Leafman, or Leafman, or however you pronounce it, wherever you're from in the world. That would have sounded a lot better. But honestly, my first impressions is I think I was a bit too harsh in my introduction, because genuinely, I have to admit, at parts, it was pretty epic. There were a lot of moments that reminded me, and again, people are going to sort of be really confused by this, but I try my best to explain. There are moments that reminded me of Lord of the Rings. There are moments that reminded me of Game of Thrones. There are parts that reminded me of old-fashioned fantasy genre archetypes. Like the epic battles where you have tons of leafmen, tons of warriors going against an invading army on the other side, and there were huge set pieces where you'd get these leafmen and you'd get the boggarts, or bogans, I think they're called in this actually, and they'd fight each other, and it would be grand and it would be epic, and the visuals, which I'll get onto specifically in a minute, all work in tandem together. That actually makes it feel epic. So I can understand where the marketing team would see the movie and go, this is pretty epic, let's call our film Epic. But it's very pretentious, and that is where I pull back, even though I feel like I was quite harsh, and I have to admit the movie does have epic moments and epic scenes, and the story's quite fun, and it's very enjoyable. Calling yourself epic is a very pretentious thing, and unless you are 100% epic in every single point, where it be story, characters, the character design, the animation, everything has to be perfect at that stage for you to go epic, and then people to watch it and come out and say, yeah, that was pretty epic. For me, it's more just the fact of there were parts of it that were epic, but overall it was good. it's a very familiar story, as it does remind me of the likes of Fern Gully, Avatar, The Ant Bully, Arthur and the Invisibles, Spider Chronicles, etc., etc. It reminds me of those, and I all like all of them. Don't get me wrong, I love them all. I think they're all fantastic. They all have that undertones of eco warrior, about saving the environment, protecting forests, protecting the greenery, making sure that corruption doesn't spread. And then you could go as far as ahead and say, oh, corruption being big business or big pharma and governments, or you could even say corruption is just being like making sure that you protect and grow a garden for yourself and peace of mind and for peace and harmony in the world. Um, Obviously, it's all familiar undertones and familiar story beats that we've seen before in Fern Gully. I'm not saying those movies do it any better. I'm just saying that we've seen this story before, so it's again, it doesn't blow my mind. Like, I enjoyed it. It's fantastic, and I even though I feel like I'm coming off quite negative, which I'm not trying to be. I'm just saying the fact of first impressions is there are parts that are pretty epic and were quite sort of amazing to see, but because it all feels very familiar, even though I enjoyed myself, it was still the fact of I came back to the name. I came back to it being you call it epic. I was expecting epic. I got epicness, but the story was too familiar to go along with the name epic. Now, if they had gone the Leafman and then had the movie as it is, just changed the title, then I would have felt like, you know what, epic moments, cool scenes, good story. Yes, it feels familiar, but they're trying to do something a modern take on the sort of eco warrior, ecotistic genre, which is fine, which is completely fine. And I feel like it would have done a lot better. Then again, going up against like Despicable Me 2 and Frozen, I feel like even with a different name, it probably wouldn't have stood a chance anyway. But as for what the film is, first impressions, I enjoy it. It's epic, wonderful, familiar, yes, but it's good. It's a good film. And it's a fun adventure for all the family. Targeted more for younger children, I would say. With like I said, with other um, Blue Sky movie reviews that I've done, all their films have an undertone of some sort of message, of a message of forgiveness, or you are like you can shine no matter what you're made of, and from robots and that sort of thing. That you always have that undertone message, and I like that. Like, I'm a big fan of Ghibli. If you've listened to any of my Ghibli reviews that I've done, you will notice that one of the things that I love so much about the Ghibli films is the undertones of the under messages. The fact of you can watch it as it is and experience it for what it is, but if you really pay attention and you take note of what they're saying or what the characters are going through, you will notice a lot more going on underneath, behind the curtain, shall we say. And it's the same here for Blue Sky Studios, and this is what I love their movies so much, is the fact of, yes, you will get the Ice Age and you will get things like you get Sid and Manny and Diego, and they have silly adventures in the snow. Fantastic, wonderful. You can turn your brain off and enjoy it. But if you turn your brain on and you pay attention, you realize in the likes of the first Ice Age that there's a lot going on. That Manny's hatred for humanity, Manny is dealing with loss. He's going through the stages of grief. Very slight undertones, but if you pay attention, you will notice them. And that story actually gets a lot more deeper than you would expect. And it's the same with robots, and it's the same with Rio and all the other movies that they've done up until this point, is that there's an undertone. And it's the same here. Granted, yes, it still follows other things that we've seen before, like Fern Gully, Avatar, and the like, but it's a modern take, and for modern audiences, modern children in 2013, who probably hadn't have or wouldn't have watched Fern Gully, because again, Fern Gully is fantastic, but it was, I think it was an 80s, 90s movie. Even though it was a fantastic film, they probably hadn't seen that. And it's always good to keep this message going, keep it for younger audiences, being like, look, we've got to protect the environment, we've got to look after the world, we've got to like the outside world, the garden is a lot more interesting than what we give it. And there might be little creatures out there, there might be huge worlds and environments out there that you won't know if you don't go out and explore. These sort of ideas and concepts. And coming back to it, like, the epicness of, like, I'm looking at my garden now, my back garden. Now, my back garden's lovely. It's average. It's nice. Greenery, trees, some plants, nettles, But there are many times, and I'll admit this, that during the summer, I will lie down in the grass and I would just put my head on the floor and I will look out and try to look through the blades of grass. Again, I grew up with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Um, and if you've watched that movie, you know that the kids get shrunk and they go into the garden, and the garden feels like a forest, feels like a jungle. It's a completely different world. And there are many times growing up, and even now as an adult, that I would lie down in the grass and I would look and I would try to imagine what it would be like to go through this jungle that is in my garden. Because again, for me, it would take me a few seconds to get from one side of the garden to the next. But if I was only like an inch to 2 inches tall, it would take me weeks, like a full-on Lord of the Rings adventure, from going from the Shire, which is my house, going down to the back of my garden, which is like, um, oh God, um, I've just had it, and I've lost all credibility as a Lord of the Rings fan. Um, Going down all the way to Mount Doom. You know what I mean? Like it's a huge, epic journey that if you're small is going to seem epic. You're going to look around and you're going to see insects, you're going to see bugs, you're going to see huge mountains and mounds of dirt that are only tiny to me. But if you're only an inch tall, is absolutely gigantic. And it's the same with the grass. The grass would seem taller, and plants would seem like huge trees. And so again, for young kids and that feeling of adventure and that feeling of protecting the environment, it's there. But there are parts here for adults like myself, and I'm guessing the people listening to this. Um, there are parts that we can enjoy. Most importantly, is the animation side of it. Like it might not look like a Blue Sky Studios film, which I'll admit I thought that in the introduction, and I've been watching it again now. It doesn't feel like what I've come to know and expect from them with what they've done so far. But again, I have to admit it's beautifully animated and crafted. The Leaf Men were, after looking into a bit of research, was that the Men, the inspiration for them was after samurai warriors. So the Leafmen actually have katana-like blades on themselves, and their armor, even though it's made out of leaves, it's very stylized. It's very artistic. It's very highly craftsmanship with different symbols on it, and even the background Leafmen that you don't really see much of, you only really see them in battle. They're all highly detailed, and the whole world the whole idea behind the world is that because they're so small, they move at a faster speed than we do, the humans do. So they're more advanced, but they're advanced in a different way. That we have this idea that advanced civilizations, advanced societies that came before us, those that built Göbekli Tepe and places like that, we like to think that they can't be so advanced because they don't have plastic or they don't have electronics, they don't have phones. Well, okay, fair enough. But maybe it's because they went down a different route of advancedness. Advancedness can mean anything, really. So they could have found plastic and realized, oh, we don't want it, and decided we weren't going to go down the route of plastic, and they went down the route of something else. Maybe they went down the route of psilocybin, papaya, and drugs, or they went down the route of mindfulness and they went down the route of spirituality. The point is I'm trying to make is the fact of when I say advanced, I don't mean technology. I mean advanced in it could be advanced in community. It could be advanced in again mindfulness, being one with nature, that sort of thing. So they're a lot more advanced, a lot more sort of connected culture than humans are, and it really shows in the animation in the research that the animators went into with creating these worlds of how intricate everything looks and how beautiful the art is and how beautiful the world looks. Of like, look, it doesn't feel like a Blue Sky Studios film, but it still looks admittedly beautiful and wonderfully crafted and animated. I will admit there are certain things like the humans, for example, like the dad. He looks a bit janky at times, and he looks a bit. I don't know. I don't want to use the word cheap because that feels really mean and cruel to say. But the dad doesn't look great at times when you see him. But everything else, when she is tiny, when MK is tiny, when she's with the Leafman, when she's with the slugs, and she's with and she's flying on the back of like hummingbirds and little robins, and you see the queen and you see the water effects and things like that, like the nature part of it. When we're in the forest, when we're tiny, that all looks fantastic. And I would imagine that is where they spent majority of their time focusing, making sure that everything tiny feels epic and wonderful and really handcrafted and gorgeous. I would imagine that's where majority of the work went, and that the whole bigger stuff, the human stuff, wasn't. Maybe it was intentional. Maybe they intentionally made the human things seem less impressive, because it's not as impressive as a miniature world deep in the forest, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm making sense. But yeah, I still feel like there's things here for kids and there's things for adults to enjoy. And like my overall thoughts is that maybe I was a little too harsh in the intro. I still don't like the name. Like, don't get me wrong, Leafman or Leafmen, however you want to pronounce it, sounds a lot better. And that even though the film is good, it it, it just didn't do enough to stand out against Despicable Me 2 and Frozen. And obviously, we all know the juggernaut of Despicable Me, and we know the huge megalodon juggernaut of Frozen, and now we're currently in the works of Frozen 2. And then you've got all the other sort of Let It Go and all the other music and how much that sort of exploded, which I don't understand why, because I still feel like Tangled is better. But again, we're not getting in that because it's a whole different conversation. Um, but even if this movie had a different name, I still feel like it it was too familiar and it didn't do enough to stand out. And again, when you had the likes of Frozen and Despicable Me, it had no chance. But still, overall, I was too harsh. Generally, it's a good film. It is worth watching. If you've got kids, they'll enjoy it. You know, especially if they haven't seen Fern Gully, or if you want to introduce them um, to sort of a film that's about nature, about getting out and about exploring. It's a good one to start with. But even like the likes of the Ant Bully, which I'm hoping to cover eventually, that's a good one. Arthur and the Invisibles, another good one. The Spiderwick Chronicles. There are tons and tons of animated and live action films out there that are like this, that are fit similar to this. So if they like this film, then there's loads more out there for them. And yeah, maybe even introduce them to Ferngully. It's still great. You know, you've got Tim Curry, Slime Beneath Me, Slime Up Above, Toxic Love, fantastic. Oh, I still remember it to this day. But yeah, my overall thoughts is it is worth watching. Despite the name, it is pretty good, and there are epic moments. It's just the marketing team really pooped the bed on the name, and it's, you know, these things happen at the end of the day. But like I said, when you're going up against Frozen, Despicable Me, it had no chance. But it's still worth watching if you haven't seen it. So, what is next in this adventure? Well, what's next on this adventure is, drum roll. Hopefully that got picked up on the mic. Is Rio 2. So April the 11th, 2014. So a year after this movie came out, we got Rio 2, and that would be the next film that I will be looking at. To be honest with you, even though, and if you listen to my review of Rio, if you haven't, go back and listen to it. It's pretty good. Even though I try my best how to explain this. Even though I enjoyed the movie for what it was when I watched it, okay, I am still hung up against the idea that it got a sequel, which I know is not very fair, because again, the movie in itself is good. You know, it's fun. I enjoyed it, but do I feel like it should have got a sequel? No. Do I think Robots should have got a sequel? Yes. Which is funny because I remember saying in that review, I was like, Robots didn't need a sequel, because it doesn't. but would I be against a sequel? No. So even though I stand on the side that Robots didn't need a sequel, I just don't think it's fair that Robots didn't get a sequel, but Rio did. Even though, again, Rio's good, and I'm not against Rio, and I'm not dogging on it. But yeah, I'll save it for the actual when I get round to watching the movie. But yeah, that'll be the next one that I look at in this adventure is for Rio 2. I'm sure it's a good film. I am. I've got to try my best to get over the fact of, you know, Robots didn't get a sequel, but Rio did. But money talks at the end of the day. Like if I look at it here, so the movie was made for 103 to 130 million dollars, and it made 498.8 million dollars back at the box office. And I think the first Rio actually made a lot of money anyway. Rio 1 it was made for 90 million and made back 484.6 million back. And Epic, just for example, was made for 93 million and only made 268.4 million dollars back. So obviously it didn't do it broke even, but it didn't do enough to inherit like sequels and things like that. But yeah, so that is the next one we do. But I am looking forward to seeing what Rio 2 like gives. I always try to go into reviews of anything that I do, no matter how much I know about them, no matter if I like them or don't like them, I always try to go in as a glass empty. So I can experience them for what they are and review them for what they are, not what I wish them to be or not why they exist or why they shouldn't, or, all that jazz. Because again, if I go in with that mindset, I am doomed to fail, myself and you as listeners. So I am looking forward to it. I am interested to see what they decided to do with a sequel for Rio. Yeah, because I've never seen it. I don't know. So we will see. But until then, I have been your host, Luke the Human. You've been listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye bye.